So he set himself the unenviable task of trying to disentangle this whole damn thing. And I'm really glad. It's about time somebody did this. I am probably one of the most prolific songwriters on earth.
You are watching the Steve Kilbey Show with Sean Graham.
Do you want to do the intro?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Steve Kilbey Show. I'm your host, Sean, and this is Will. Will's joining us today. He's the host of the YouTube channel that hosts this lovely show that everybody's loving. It's their favorite show. It's his favorite show. It's my favorite show. I just watch it on repeat, you know. Anyway, we're excited today. We're going to talk about some church and Will personal connections.
Yeah. And first, we're going to start with a couple of questions as we cue the helicopter as it flies over.
See it over there.
Maybe we'll cut this out. There'll probably be a lot of that here in South LA. I mean, the criminal activity, what time? It's 10 o'clock in the morning.
10 o'clock, yeah.
So it's a little early, but
it's all right.
Yeah. I'm somehow not surprised. Yeah. All right. So I just want to ask Sean a couple of questions. Sure. And the first question is, could you tell me about the origin of the show?
Sure. At some point in discussing many things with you, we both love a lot of different music. I have a certain love for a lot of Australian music and movies and things like that. A sort of conversation topic came up about potentially doing a show about Steve Kilbey. You had actually jokingly photoshopped the Steve Kilbey Show or something like that with a photo of me with him or something like that. At some point, and I think we were laughing about it at first, but then it just turned into, a gem of a good idea, I thought, because why not, right? His body of work is very impressive, and so it would give us something to do and focus on for a little bit this year in 2026.
Were you surprised by Steve Kilbey's response to the show?
Very surprised. Very surprised. This is a show that I'm completely doing for fun. It's kind of you to take time to work on it a little bit with me as well, but it's mostly just for fun. So when I posted it, that first video, and tagged him in it, I definitely was not expecting a response. So it was nice that he sat down and watched that first episode, seemed to really enjoy it, laughed a lot about it, laughed at the map of Australia that I drew, stuff like that, right? And that's been really nice. And I think in having conversations with, I believe, his wife through their merch site on social media, it seems like, he seems like he's appreciative of somebody, appreciating his work, right? So, yeah.
Who are you hoping to have on the show in the future, if anyone, besides me?
You're the number one guest I was hoping to get. I'm glad I could secure that. There's a couple people I would like. I would love to, I ran into those Married to Vinyl couple at Amoeba. They were wearing a church shirt. And I think when I sort of commented on one of the videos, that'd be fun to have them on the show. I think they were a little bit over with the church, and watching their church videos, they're going through everything and they're completists, very much like me and you. And I feel like they've got so much stuff. They really seem to want to take a break from it. So they would be great to get on the show. I would love to get the manager from Amoeba on the show, because the church, he's told me many times, is his favorite band. I didn't really broach that. I ran into him the other day and talked about him. He mentioned that Steve is going to be in the store in LA here doing a What's in My Bag episode, which is something that Amoeba does. The artist will go around the store and grab a bunch of records, and then they do a little video kind of like this where they talk about all the stuff that they bought in the store. So that was cool to find out he's going to be doing that. So that guy, Chris is his name. I would love to get him on the show if it's something he's interested in. And, obviously the pinnacle would be to get Steve on the show. I don't really feel comfortable asking that question. I kind of want it to happen naturally. But, if the show continues this year and they're not in the middle of a fucking tour in the States, then maybe, there's an opportunity later to ask that question,
Sure. The Married to Vinyl people, whose videos I strongly recommend, they have a pretty amazing church collection, to say the least. Like, very extensive, and it's very impressive. And so if you haven't checked that out, I totally recommend that. Today, so we're going to talk about some gigs, kind of some older gigs, but then also some newer ones, maybe, if we have time. And so the first thing I want to talk about is a church show I saw in Minneapolis in 1986 at First Avenue, the nightclub. So let me get my props for that. So here is a ticket for that night, and this is actually my ticket from the show. Shadow Cabinet, that's the website.
Wait a second. Your ticket was this big?
Yeah, it was very big. Very big. This is actually my ticket, but Shadow Cabinet, the website, has a ticket from that night very similar to this, but of course our seat numbers are different. Mine is number 48. Not that there's seats in the club, there weren't. But if you do, check out the price, which is $7 advance. Those were different times.
Nice.
Anyway, so I want to talk just a little bit about this show. I don't remember a lot about it, but I was able to find some local press from the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. The one thing, they were in support of Heyday at this point, right? And one thing I found is that apparently Let's Active, who is a band I absolutely loved with Mitch Easter, who made all those REM records way back when, opened, although I don't remember that at all. So I'm wondering if that happened. And I really loved that band, so I would think I would definitely would have an impact on me. Anyway, what the Star-Tribune had said at the time was the reviewer had pointed to the incredible lush interplay between Marty Wilson Piper and Peter Kappas. And rather than taking traditional sort of ego-driven guitar solos, the duo wove together a massive wall of chime. I'm not sure what that is. The wall of chime. So they opened with this track from
Myrrh.
Yeah, Myrrh from Heyday, right? Yeah.
Right.
Okay. And then, of course, they played some deeper cuts throughout the course of the night, like Constant and Opal and Tantalize. Tantalize from Heyday?
Also Heyday.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, but Constant and Opal not.
It wasn't, no.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And then they did wind up playing an earlier hit, The Unguarded Moment, which I want to say is probably from the Seance, maybe?
First record.
First record, okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad we have him here.
Much to Steve's, I'm sure, dismay. He hates that song.
Yeah, he hates that song, so there you go. Anyway, the reviewer also praised the solid thump of drummer Richard and, of course, Kilbey working together in anchoring a dreamlike, swirling guitar textures. Yes, that's perfect. And that's definitely a rock scribe talking for you.
I feel like a lot of the descriptions, whether it's an album review or a live concert review, it's all like that. Walls of sound, walls of guitar sound, swirling, psychedelic. It's the same, monikers I feel like they get placed for this band.
Yeah.
Right?
Like there's a what do you call it, a word bank.
Yeah, church
Please
word
choose please choose from the word bank, right? Yeah. That's going to come up again. And so let's move on to the next gig.
Yes,
by all means.
This is the first time you ever saw them.
Yes.
Correct?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And yeah, it was the Heyday. I loved that record, Heyday.
So
Still do. But I do remember it being like, it was just so foreign. Yeah. Because first of all, I was probably 18 or 19. Well, I was probably 19. And, I would not, there was never in my life I would ever see anyone from Australia ever, or even hear someone speaking in that with an accent, and so that right there at that very young age had a very big impact, despite the fact that I'm telling you I can't remember too much about it. It's coming back to me.
That's interesting. Was that the first band you think you saw that wasn't American?
No, I wouldn't say that, because there was a lot of English bands that came through First Avenue for sure. But the Australian bands we saw were obviously like Midnight Oil. I remember that one quite well. The Hoodoo Gurus. I think my roommate went to that. I didn't make it, but and so yeah, I'd have to look at a list of other Australian.
And just
bands.
One last quick question: when you went to this, you owned Heyday at the time. Had you picked up any of the other stuff, or like Heyday you knew because you heard a song on the radio, or like how
No, I definitely had Heyday, and even before that, because in high school, some friends of mine, I don't know how, because we lived in rural South Dakota, had managed to get copies of the earlier albums, especially the one, what's the label, Carrere?
Yeah, the French label.
Yeah, like how on earth would you get that in rural America? But someone had it. Someone had a copy of it, and of course taping was big, and so you could make a cassette. of it if you were unable to like buy the record, and at least you could have
Yeah.
listen to it when you wanted.
That's what I love about. I told that story recently about Martin Kennedy, of the Kilbey Kennedy collaboration. Can't speak. That's what he had seen a show in the '80s at a festival, and he taped it, and then he was like became obsessed with it, and then all these years later they're working together, which is kind of funny. But
Right.
yeah, I forget about that was like a thing.
Yeah, it was totally a thing, and I was like a cassette culture fanatic. I didn't even call it that. I mean, that wasn't even a thing, right? But I would like, even in my youth, I would listen to the radio, and I had a little portable cassette player, and you could record songs right off, and you'd like yell at your mom for making noise, or your sister during the song, because it wasn't like hooked up with AV cables. It was just like,
Yeah.
I love it as the truck passes by. All right, so let's move on to the next show from First Avenue. Okay, so this next show I saw also at First Avenue was from 1988. Same venue, First Avenue. The church playing. Price went up, as we discussed, to $12 advanced tickets. And so I found an interesting article from the Star Tribune, again, the local newspaper. And this I will definitely credit to the people at Shadow Cabinet, who do an excellent job of archiving.
So
a lot of this stuff would be very hard to find just randomly on the internet, even now, because it's been so long. But the Star Tribune did a little story about the show. It was actually a series of shows, because they were going to play the Guthrie Theater on night one, and that was a Monday night, and then they were going to play First Avenue on the Tuesday night. Well, I elected to go to the First Avenue show because that was my nightclub, and Guthrie Theater is not. And so, and it was also, it's hard to say without being negative, but maybe it's a little too bourgeois for me.
Sure.
Also, I believe it was in St. Paul, which is a whole other driving.
Say no more.
Say no more, right?
Okay.
But so the story, this was like a wire service story from actually the LA Times that they printed, where they, instead of sort of focusing on the show or the upcoming show, although they do advertise that tickets are available. The opening act was the band 5440 from Canada, if you're familiar with them. But they focus on the new deal with Arista, and I'll read you just a couple of things, and also the new deal with Rykodisc, all right? So a miraculous thing happened during the negotiations with Arista Records. 3 of the group's 4 members, that would be Marty, Peter, and Steve, all signed solo deals with Rykodisc, an independent label. Now, in the absence of almost 2 years, the church is suddenly an omnipresent power, not only as the group's newest single, Under the Milky Way, from the debut Arista album Starfish, cracked the top 40. The church's 3 solo project, that would be Kilbey's Earth, Marty Wilson Piper's Art Attack, and Peter Kappa's When Reason Forbids, a Requiem, are receiving a tremendous amount of play on alternative and college radio stations. All right, and so they go on, they talk with Kilbey, and they're sort of worried about overexposure, which, interesting, right?
Especially so early in the career.
Exactly what I was thinking. But here's from our word bank, right? It doesn't hurt that Starfish is easily the most commercial album that the church have produced in the 8 years of as being a band. Some say the songs run the gamut from soothing to non-threatening pop to long, leisurely. Some say rambling songs reminiscent of the Grateful Dead.
What?
I know what, right? I'm not that way. If anyone has that connection or made that connection, please explain to me more how you come up with that.
I'd be offended if I was.
Well, many were, right? Or many would be. Anyway, the last bit from that, and I'm not reading this in its entirety, it's much too voluminous. Rykodisc marketing stance, the nearly simultaneous release of the solo albums. Drummer Richard is the only church member without a solo arrangement. Why not?
I would have liked to have heard that.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. It never happened, and certainly now never will.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, when they signed, the church members, recalls Rykodisc's representative, they were just these members of a cult band. We really liked what they had done, and the media was always very supportive, but they certainly weren't a top 40 artist. Ta-da! Until Starfish. All right. So the other thing that happened, now this was the First Avenue show. The night before, the band shot a music video for Reptile. And so I have a couple of little chunks for that. These are so lo-fi. Here's Marty, right?
Yeah.
And so I found some very interesting comments on YouTube, which we love YouTube, so it's no big surprise that I found them on YouTube. But somebody who was at this show, right, says this was filmed at the Guthrie Theater in Minneapolis, St. Paul, 1988. The close-ups of the band were done right before they let us in, so we could hear the song being played over and over and over again, because, of course, they're playing to the track, while they're waiting in the lobby. And the signs on the door said that they would be filming. He goes on to say that he happened to be in the fourth row and right in front of Marty, who we can see right here. I happened to grab that kind of screen grab. But someone else commented, said, I thought the crowd was green screen. And the person says it was a real crowd. And the opening act, 5440, didn't get to play since the band went overtime doing all these shots, right? And then someone else remarks, knowing 5440, they must have been really pissed. And so here is the wide shot, fairly useless, but you can go and watch the Reptile video, right? Of like, here's the band on stage, and somebody commented, why are there so many white shirts? And they're like, well, it was summertime in Minneapolis. And, people like to, after being tied up all winter inside, they like to live it up a little and dress lightly. And so here is the flips, I guess it would be the reverse angle of the crowd, which there weren't too many in the music video. But you can see when they do the close-ups of Marty or whoever, Steve singing, Richard on the drums, Peter on the other guitar, it looks a little like prefab, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a little too clean. So anyway, that was for Reptile. While we're there, though, this was not too long ago, and when Peter was still in the band, however, and he was talking to 89.3, The Current, a DJ at The Current, and they were talking about Minneapolis back in the day, and he said, most of America didn't know anything about us. Am I holding up the ugliest shot? Yeah, let's just get this out of here. I'll just hold up the paper. Most of America didn't know anything about us, but there was a record shop in Minneapolis called Northern Lights. I'm going to get some shots of that so we can see what it looks like. I shopped there as well. It was at 7th and Hennepin. And they said, we've got a record signing for you. And we went, oh no, because we'd done a couple of these and they were like Spinal Tap. There was no one there. So at Northern Lights, they opened the door and there's 400 people waiting to come in to get their record signed into this warehouse, right, with a store space. And it was probably more people than were at the actual gig, says Peter. Right? That's not exactly true. But he says, we were stars in Minneapolis, but we'd go somewhere else like Cleveland and nobody knew who we were, right? Peter, that's Peter talking to 89.3, The Current radio station it's called The Current station in Minneapolis. And then we also have from Steve's book, which is called Something Quite Peculiar, right here. He reminisces about this too, and I'll read you a small excerpt, right? Anyway, people had been telling us about Minneapolis and this record shop that had given us a lot of support. Seance had been a big seller there on import, and the shop was called Northern Lights. So we were going to have a record signing. We'd done a few of these before, and no one would show up. It was totally Spinal Tap, I tell you. So we were rather wary about the idea and didn't believe all the hype. You can imagine I was pretty shocked when they led us into the store and they had over 400 people lined up. They gave us a huge ovation. If only every city would have been like that, we would have been fucking laughing. It was very touching, and it gave us hope to carry us into the future towards gigs where they hadn't heard of us or no one turned up. And it helped boost our sometimes flagelling morale. So anyway, okay, that's from Steve's book. So the next gig I want to talk about is
this event that they're talking about, the signing that you went to.
Yeah.
Was after Starfish came out, right?
Yeah, but not by much.
Was it after the show you saw? Like next time they came into town? Do you think?
No, I think it was right around that same time. Because I know, like I don't think they would have came through twice. You know,
I know there were two legs of that tour. I just don't know, if they went
right.
But
yeah, and I
why
can't
wouldn't they?
remember. I can't remember either. But also that's a shadow cabinet thing right there,
Yeah,
because they would totally have the.
I haven't talked about it much either, but that website is incredible. Obviously, a lot of the information that I think I'm getting and you're getting is definitely from there. They have a lot of great stuff, and if you're interested in the live show, they have a chronicle of, all of this stuff. Not just chronicles. They've got ticket stub photos, photos from the show. They have downloads for some of the shows,
Yeah.
and you can actually search by just downloads if that's interesting to you. It's a great resource for sure.
Yeah, it totally is. And the thing I like most about it is just being able to. I love when they have the actual press from the time.
Yes.
Right. Like that is great because it just it paints you everything in an entirely different kind of way. Right. Where now you can do a Google search for a show and they might just give you this sort of homogenized answer based on like similar instances, which sometimes have virtually nothing to do with it. Right.
It's incredible. And I wish that more bands had fans that, dedicated themselves to websites like this. Like Nine Inch Nails has that site, that live archive site that's incredible. And it's like they obviously have an in with the band or something. And it feels like this is the same.
Yeah.
Like there must be some kind of connection to Steve and or other guys from the band. But it's a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of great. I love those press clippings too. I found like a whole section on 1988 the other day when I was listening to Starfish again, and there's just so many interviews from those guys at the time in publications and whatnot. It's great.
And such a shitload of work.
So much.
Like literally, in
Full-time
that case,
job.
lifetime of collecting things and chronicling things. So here was another show I attended. It was also that same year in 1988. I had moved that year from Minneapolis to Boulder, Colorado, of all places. And so this was in August of that year. Had the ticket prices went up $16. So not terrible, right? But this was sort of an odd show because it was also with Peter Murphy and then with Tom Verlaine opening the show. And so I did find some original press for this. Hold for helicopter. All right. I did find some original press from this from the Colorado Springs Gazette, and this was written on August 20th, 1988. I'm not going to read you everything. But since we were talking about word banks, the Rock Scribe says he described the performance as a blend of spacey brilliance, psychedelic and modernistic music, and spooky guitar sounds.
Ooh, that's new.
Here comes the helicopter again. The performance kicked off with guitarist Marty Wilson Piper under a lone spotlight, utilizing a bizarre barrage of guitar effects that shook the venue as they launched into Constantinople. All right, so
good opener.
All right. He also remarks that sometimes bassist and vocalist Steve Kilbey's performance was overshadowed by the solid thump of drummer Richard Plug. I'm saying that right, I think. The big hit, interestingly, the reviewer says that the massive hit Under the Milky Way felt surprisingly rushed, kind of like this video, as if the band just wanted to get through it. All right, but the standout was a clear climax for the evening was Tantalized from Heyday. And the reviewer says they love the panicked 4/4 time. And then finally the ending is the show took an unexpected, confusing turn when the encores when Tom Verlaine joined the church on stage to add his unique signature guitar playing. According to the reviewer, as the final song ended, the band went a little too wild on stage, and Steve Kilbey did not look too happy about this. So, despite the chaotic final moment, the reviewer concluded the dramatic display held its weight during the spacey, hypnotic atmosphere of the night. So that was Denver in 1988, I believe, at the Paramount Theater, if my memory serves me well.
Is that still there? Do you know?
Yeah, I'm almost certain it is. Yeah. Okay, so that's that, and then what I think maybe we should do is maybe we'll just do like an LA show. LA show.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, because we're kind of running long, and our guest is here.
Yeah,
and,
our guest is here.
And it's time to wrap it up. So maybe we'll do that.
I asked our guest recently. I said, if we had a free ticket to a show, would you want to go? He said, I'd go for a couple songs, and then I'd leave.
Bounce, yeah, I get it.
He gets it.
Yeah. So maybe we'll do that because this is the Blasco which I did see you at this show. I'm trying to remember what.
Yeah, we
you
went.
just said what tour that was.
Hypnagogue tour.
Yeah. So maybe we'll do that as another show since this one's running long. We'll talk LA shows, and then it'll give everybody a chance maybe to weigh in.
Yeah.
On some, if you've been to some LA shows.
Yeah, any shows. Like if you have a history of going to shows anywhere in a specific spot, or if you follow them around a little bit, we'd love to hear about that in the comments for sure.
Okay.
Cool.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, Sean.
So he set himself the unenviable task of trying to disentangle this whole damn thing. And I'm really glad. It's about time somebody did this. I am probably one of the most prolific songwriters on earth.
You are watching The Steve Kilbey Show with Sean Graham.